Today I'm going to take you behind the scenes to show you all the work that goes into one of my sketch notes. So the book is called Personality Isn't Permanent. It's by Benjamin Hardy. And so what I've done is, as I went through the book, I made notes on the different sections in the book. And as I went along, I would, as I'd make notes, I would figure out, like a little sketch here of what I think would fit. Title, and we'll do that in block letters. These are block letters that I've been doing probably 40 years now, so it comes pretty simple. And I find it doesn't have to be perfect. Because with everything else, we can clean it up in Photoshop. So personality. I have to check spelling sometimes. Personality. Fine tipped marker. So I'm going to want these letters to really stand out. So here's the tip about lettering. If I were to draw a rectangle that I wanted those letters to fit in, it would be hard to squeeze them in. Instead, it's easier to do the lettering first, then put the rectangle around them. Okay? Now, for the word permanent, I want the color to stand out. So I've used the fine tip marker to write the word permanent. You'll also notice too that whenever I do lettering and I'm trying to center them over top of each other, most of the time I just do it by eye. And in this word, using the block letters helps because I was able to shrink the N's here and the E so that I can make it fit. And then what I'll do is I'll use different shades of a color, going from darker to lighter, to again reinforce that message that it's impermanent. So I wanted to include an important quote that the author used at the beginning of the book, because I think it'll summarize a lot of what the book was about. And I'm going to use quotation marks. Big quotation marks. And I'm going to leave that blank because it's easier to color in Photoshop than it is on the paper. And I'm going to use the different font here. This is a typewriter font I like to use. The next section is called Myths of Personality, and there's 5 different myths, and I want to use the happy face as a symbol for personality, and then I'm going to use it in each one of these myths. So the first one, personality can be categorized into types. I had the idea of including the happy face in a cylinder. And then adding different geometric shapes. next myth is personality is innate and fixed. And so I was thinking of attaching the happy face with a chain to the word fixed. The third one, personality comes from your past. I'm actually going to reuse an image that I already have of a yearbook. So I'm just going to, just for my guide, I'm going to put a rectangle that looks about the same shape as the yearbook. And then I can draw a happy face on that. The fourth one, personality must be discovered. Simple one I use all the time as a magnifying glass. So and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a happy face underneath it, one half of it, and then it's bigger on this side. The last one, personality is your true authentic self. I'm just going to use, again, these are one of the images that I use over and over again of a ribbon, like a prize ribbon. And then put a happy face in the middle. One of the things I've learned over the years is that I can use highlighter, yellow highlighter, as a guide because yellow does not show up on scans. So you can use it as a guide for lettering, and I often do that, especially for any specialized lettering like in a circle. So this is on our Sketchnote, this is going to be a section called Truth About Personality. So I want to put that lettering around the circle. There are 4 different sections that are going to require some text with an image. And the first one is transform your trauma. So I'm going to use the same blocked lettering that I used in the title for consistency. So I'm going to show you now how we work around that image that I still haven't drawn yet. It's going to go in here. And I'm going to write the text that goes along with transform your trauma. And I'm also going to use the highlighter so that I can use it as a guide. So you can see how it's difficult when I'm writing in italics to keep it straight. So that's why the highlighter helps with that. The next section is called Enhance Your Subconscious, and I'm going to use an illustration of an iceberg. But we're going to again use those block letters. Now remember, we want to leave space here for the iceberg illustration. So I'm going to use my yellow highlighter. So I'll know to stay away from that when I write. So for my iceberg illustration, I'm going to do a search on Google Images. And I always like to use illustration as opposed to cartoon or clip art. It just gives me so many different variations that I can look at. So I've started it with a marker and I have the horizon line, but I'm going to use the fine tip because it's a smaller image that I have to draw. And so from what I saw in most of those illustrations were a couple of peaks, and underneath there's so much more. And of course, that's the whole imagery of an iceberg, that there's so much more under the surface. And then we had some lines like cracks and crevices. And again, most of it was below the surface. But on top, I'm going to put a little break in it, so I can have some contrasting colors. And then when I do the colors, it's lighter up above and darker down below. So let's just add some clouds here. And again, this image will be so small in the final that it doesn't have to be perfect. The next section is called Shift Your Story. And I'm going to have the illustrations on the right-hand side. So I'm going to leave room on that side in the top corner for the next two. I'm going to, again, use the yellow highlight. The drawing here is going to be a simple book with a splash, a flash, an exclamation mark, just to enhance the idea of a story. So books are pretty standard and I do them all the time. And then I'm going to put an exclamation mark and then a flash. The final one is called Redesign Your Environment. So I'm going to put the block letters here again. And again, on the right-hand side, I want to have like a blueprint. And now we're going to put the type in underneath. And so I'm going to draw an illustration of a blueprint. With some perspective there. And then I'm going to use the fine tip to complete the illustrations. So now that all the illustrations are done, I can now scan them and start working on them in Photoshop.